Boker Tov, it's wonderful to be with you here this Sunday morning. I'm Rabbi Shaner, and I'm really excited to share this Boker Tov with Temple Sinai, our daily chance to reflect, connect, and remember. This morning, we're going to begin like we do every morning with some thoughts of gratitude just to be here. And so we'll say this prayer for our body and for our spirit, without which we couldn't show up. We couldn't come to face this day and make a sacred occasion out of it. And so we'll begin together. Baruch ata Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, asher yatzar et האדם בחוכמה, ובראבו נקבים, נקבים, חלולים, חלולים, גלוי וידוע לפני כסאי כבודך, שאם ייפתח אחד מהם, או יסתם אחד מהם, אי אפשר להתקיים ולעמוד לפניך. ברוך אתה אדוני, רופא כל בשר ומפליא לעשות. Blessed eternal God, creator of the universe, you have fashioned our bodies with wisdom, creating within us a finely balanced network. To stand before you in prayer is itself a fragile miracle. Eternal God, we praise you as the healer of body and spirit. And we continue this morning with a prayer of gratitude for our ability to stretch our minds and our hearts in learning Torah together. Baruch ata Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kidshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu la'asok b'divrei Torah. V'ha'arevna Adonai Eloheinu et divrei Toratcha b'finu, ובפי עמך בית ישראל, ונהיה אנחנו וצאצאינו וצאצאי עמך בית ישראל, כולנו יודעי שמך, ולומדי תורתך לשמה. Baruch ata Adonai, hamelamed Torah le'amo Yisrael. Blessed eternal God, creator of the universe, you sanctify our lives with mitzvot and command us to engage in Torah study. Eternal our God, may your words of Torah be sweet to us. Let every generation, young and old, the whole family of Israel, come to know you through study of Torah for its own sake. Eternal God, we praise you as the teacher of Torah to the people Israel. Torah teaches us a lot of lessons, but among them, and the most important of all, is that we are part of something larger than ourselves, that everything in the universe is connected to a single point, and that point is that God is one. And so we affirm that truth which has stood by us through the generations by reciting the words of Shema together. Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. Baruch Shem Kevod Malchuto Leolam Va'ed. Ve'ahavta et Adonai Elohecha b'chol levavcha u'b'chol nafshecha ובכל מאודיך, והיו הדברים האלה, אשר אנוכי מצווך היום על לבביך, ושיננתם לבניך, ודיברת בם, בשבתך בביתך, ובלכתך בדרך, ובשוכבך ובקומך, וקשרתם לאות על ידיך, והיו לטוטפות בין עיניך, וכתבתם על מזוזות ביתך, ובשעריך. ויאמר אדוני אל משה לאמור, דבר אל בני ישראל ואמרת עליהם, ועשו להם ציצית על כנפי בגדיהם לדורותם, ונתנו על ציצית הכנף פתיל תכלת. והיה לכם לציצית, וראיתם אותו, וזכרתם את כל מצוות אדוני, ועשיתם אותם. ולא תטורו אחרי לבבכם ואחרי עיניכם, אשר אתם זונים אחריהם. למען תזכרו ועשיתם את כל מצוותיי, והייתם קדושים לאלוהיכם. אני אדוני אלוהיכם, אשר הוצאתי אתכם מארץ מצרים, להיות לכם לאלוהים, אני אדוני אלוהיכם. Adonai Elohechem Emet. Emet means truth. And there are lots of different ways of finding our way to things that are true. Most of the time, we do this with speech, with learning and studying, and we study whole texts. But one of the things that I have been doing with you on this Boker Tov stream that I hope to continue today is to learn some lessons, learn some truths from not just the texts of our tradition, but from the letters that form those texts themselves. That is to study the alphabet, the Aleph Bet, which we learn to decode as children and don't think too much about, but which actually, by studying its forms and its order, we can learn a great deal. And so this morning we'll continue our study of the Aleph Bet with the third and fourth letters of the alphabet, the letter Gimel and the letter Dalet. So as you can see on this chart, which should be sharing in just a second, there you go. As you can see on this chart, the letters Gimel and Dalet, the third and fourth letter, in their ancient writing, the Ketav Ivri, the Hebrew script, and the pictograph that preceded it, the letters Gimel and Dalet are represented in the form of a foot and the frame of a door, respectively. And in the later Ketav Ashuri, the script which forms the basis of our Torah scroll, these forms are basically unchanged. The letter Gimel looks like a little foot with a little boot with a heel, and the letter Dalet has the shape of a door frame. And as you can see here, that's all still here. And so what do we learn from just the form is that one of these, the Gimel, has a bit of stability, has a rootedness, the kind of rootedness that comes from standing on our feet. Well, the Dalet, the open door, presents us with an opportunity. And this is one way to hint at what we learn in the Talmud by studying not just the forms of the letters, but the order. And the Talmud, which we began to study this midrash on the Aleph Bet last week, continues with Gimel and Dalet by teaching that the order of these letters is meant to hint at the phrase Gemol Dalim. So it says Gimel Dalet means Gemol Dalim, which is the Hebrew way of saying give to the needy. Why is the leg of the Gimel extended toward the Dalet? Because it is the manner of one who bestows loving kindness to pursue the poor. And so if we look at the Gimel, we see that in Ketav Ashuri, in the writing in the Torah scroll, the letter Gimel has its front foot really reaching out, and the Talmud interprets that as kind of chasing after the letter Dalet. These letters are, for the Talmud, all about giving and receiving. And right now we're focused on the giving, this notion that we should run after the mitzvah of giving tzedakah and taking care of people, of doing gimilut chasadim. The word gimilut is the noun form of the word that the Talmud chooses here in this phrase, gemol, which basically means to do something good, not only because it's commanded, not only because it's asked for, but out of the kindness that we have in our hearts as human beings. And so we learned that there are lots of ways to give. One of those is to give with a tight-fisted attitude. One of those is to wait until you are asked. One of those is to give because we want to feel good about ourselves, which is tricky and complicated, as we're going to see here. But the phrase that the Talmud gives us, Gemol Dalim, doesn't mean to give in any of those ways. It means to give out of the kindness of our heart, the shared humanity that we have with the person who is a dal, a needy person. And if you look at the end of this paragraph, we also learn that the Dalet faces away from the Gimel. Why? It says that one should give discreetly so that the poor person will not be embarrassed by receiving. And when we look again, we notice that you have this foot, this gimel, chasing after the dalet, and the dalet is running in the other direction. That's why we should chase down someone to give them, but it's also why we should give discreetly, why we should be careful about the way that we give. And the Talmud here already understands something that is complicated and hard to say, which is that there is a hierarchy of giving and receiving, that when we think about what it means to give, we often overlook the fact, we assume, but we overlook that there is a power dynamic here, that the person who gives is someone who has. The person who receives, we think, is someone who doesn't have. And so the giver has all of the pride here, and the receiver maybe has gratitude. But the shadow of each of those feelings is that the giver gets some kind of arrogance, some kind of self-esteem that is maybe a little too high. And the receiver has this shame of not being able to meet their own needs. And when we look carefully, we understand that no one really gives without receiving something from them for themselves. No one, and that means that sometimes we are giving to make ourselves feel good, and that's not a bad thing necessarily, but it's something that we need to acknowledge, that this system of philanthropy that as we understand it, isn't a neutral thing. But so the Talmud then, in the middle of this midrash, gives us a solution. It points out that the dalet also, even though the dalet is facing the other way, is running away from the giver. The dalet extends its leg back. Why is that? Why does the dalet reach back towards the gimel? The answer is that the gimel, just as the gimel is reaching out to the dalet is reaching out to the gimel, not to receive, but to give. That the giver is receiving the opportunity to make the world a better place, and that the receiver is giving that opportunity to the giver. And when we understand that these two people, the giver and the receiver, are part of a system that is connected, that they need each other, that they are both giving each other something, then we understand that just as no one really gives without receiving something, no one really receives without giving. And the hierarchy, the power dynamic that we assume is there when someone gives charity and someone receives charity is flattened by this understanding that these people are connected by something greater. And when we understand that, we can find our way to giving from a place not of pride, not of arrogance, not even of making ourselves feel good about the inequalities in the world, but out of a place of gratitude that we have the opportunity to try to make the world a better place. And so the Gimel and the Dalet need each other and are holding hands in this picture because they are two people who are giving each other something and lifting each other up. When we understand what it is to really give out of gemilut chasadim, out of the loving kindness in our shared humanity, we can lift each other out of even the most desperate situations. And so with that, we turn to the duty that we have to think of those who are in need of lifting up, those who are ill, isolated, and working on the front lines to keep us all safe and secure. We ask God for their healing and protection with the words of our tradition. Mishaberach avotenu Avraham, Yitzchak, veYaakov, ve'imotenu Sarah, Rivka, Leah, veRachel, hu yirapeh et kol makotenu. יהי רצון מלפניך, אדוני אלוהינו, להחלימם ולרפאותם, וישלח לנו מהרה רפואה שלמה ועטרת שלום, ותגן עלינו ממחלה רעה, ונאמר אמן. May the one who blessed our fathers, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and our mothers, Sarah, Rebecca, Leah, and Rachel, heal all who suffer. May it be your will to provide healing and strength. Reveal to us the holiness of life, the wholeness of shalom, and let us say together, Amen. Having brought to mind those who are in need of healing, we also now turn our thoughts to those who paved the way for us, who helped us to learn all these lessons and become the people we are today. This morning, our community remembers and extends condolences to the families of those who died in recent days and weeks. David Garber, Zena Werb, Robert Filler, and Alan Fridson, as well as those in our community and connected to our community who died on this 20th day of Tammuz in years past. Abe Bresver, Ellie Nathan Cooper, Belle Kaufman, Gary Kirschenbaum, Molly Lee, Ralph Morris, Benjamin Shane, and Hyman Schiff. Zichronam livracha. May their memories always bring us blessing as we turn to words sanctified by memory, words glorified by hope, the words of Kaddish Yatom. Yitgadal v'yitkadash shmeh rabbah, be'alma divrach iruteh, ve'amlich machuteh, v'chayechon uvyomechon, uvchaye dechol beit Yisrael, ba'agala uvizman kariv v'imru, Amen. Yehei shmeh rabbah mevarach, le'alam u'le'alamei alamaya, yitbarach v'yishtabach, v'yitpa'al v'yitromam v'yitnaseh, v'yithadal v'yit'aleh v'yithalal, shmeh dekudsha berichu. Le'ela min kol birchata v'shirata, tushbechata v'nechemata, da'amiran be'alma v'imru, Amen. Yehei shlama rabba min shmaya, v'chaim aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael v'imru, Amen. Oseh shalom b'meromav, hu yaraseh shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael v'imru, Amen. May the source of peace send peace to all who mourn and comfort to all who are bereaved. And let us say together, Amen. Well, it's been really wonderful for me to get to spend this morning with you. I just have a few announcements before we say Boker Tov, one of which is that a contribution has been made to the Ellie Cooper Memorial Fund by the Cooper family, observing yahrzeit for Ellie Cooper, as well as an invitation to please join us every morning at this time for a chance to connect as a community and to reflect together on a meaningful topic, and to join us on Tuesday for 2 adult studies programs. One is at noon, which will be the continuation of our Lunch and Learn program that we started last week, where we'll be studying a little Talmud together. And one is at 7 p.m., where we will be discussing the Israeli television show Fauda, which released its 3rd season on Netflix this summer, and that will be with Carrie Swartz, our Director of Congregational Learning, and myself, and I'm sure we'll have a great discussion. Hope that you have a wonderful week, that you have a Shavua Tov, and that you go out there and make it a great day. Boker Tov.